I'd like to call the meeting to order, please. This is the regular meeting, Thursday, October 20th. At approximately 1 o'clock, it's the City Council, the Library Board, the Housing Authority Board, and the City Council representing the Redevelopment Successor Agency. I'd like to ask Sheriff Deputy Loza and Deputy Villasenor if they would be kind enough to come up to the podium and lead us in the flag salute. Please begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Hobart?
Here.
Councilmember Kite?
Here.
Councilmember Smotrich? Here. Mayor Pro Tem Townsend?
Here.
And Mayor Weil.
Here. At this time, I would like to ask for a moment of silence for the fallen Palm Springs police officers, Jose Gil Vega and Leslie Zaremde, who, of course, made the ultimate sacrifice for us. They have left behind a family, in the case of Officer Vega, 8 children. In the case of Leslie Zaremde, a 4-month-old child. Obviously a tragedy, and yet they died in the line of duty protecting us. So if you'll please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. At this time, if there are no objections from the council, I'd like to move action item number 8 to be considered at this time. It's a consideration of a donation of $10,000 to the Palm Springs Police Officers Association, $5,000 for each of the surviving families of the fallen officers. Do I have any objections? Okay. Are there any comments of any kind from the audience? At this time, I would like to ask my fellow council members if they would like to make any comments.
I didn't hear what you said. Mayor, I just want to mention that we all went to the service this last week for the 2 officers. It was very moving. They must have had 20,000 people there, and it was a beautiful service. And most of the cities, I think, were certainly represented, and all of rancho Mirage was there.
Thank you. I would like to ask Council Member Hobart if he would be kind enough to make a motion regarding the donation.
It'd be my pleasure, Mr. Mayor. I would move that the City Council of Rancho Mirage authorize a donation of $10,000 to the Palm Springs Police Officers Association, intending that gift to go $5,000 for each of the surviving families of fallen police officers Jose Gil Vega and Leslie Zaremde.
Is there a second?
Second.
Please vote. And the motion is approved 5-0. Officers Loza and Villasenor, would you please come forward? And if you'd be kind enough, this is a check for $10,000 payable to Mr. Joe Cook, President of the Palm Springs Police Officers Association. And if you would be kind enough to deliver this on behalf of the City of Rancho Mirage, the City Council of Rancho Mirage, and the 18,000 approximate residents who are most indebted for your service. Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, I will call for non-agenda public comments for 3 minutes on any items that are not on the agenda. I have one request this morning from Aurora Wilson.
Good afternoon. My name is Aurora Wilson, and I'm here to say a few words about Measure CC and urge a yes vote for College of the Desert, local students, our economy, and the future of the Coachella Valley. College of the Desert is a story of success. In the early 60s, my late husband moved to the Coachella Valley from Central California to teach at COD, and did so for 30 years until he had to resign as college professor in 1994 in order to serve as your county supervisor. But he loved every minute of it, as it was his investment to improving the quality of life in our Coachella Valley communities. And today, COD has become the second fastest growing community college in this state. Today, we have 14,000 students enrolled. We have outgrown our facilities, and we look to our communities to help us help themselves. Measure CC is a ballot initiative that will upgrade and expand COD throughout the Coachella Valley. It will strengthen COD's footprint throughout the valley, building needed classrooms and training areas to relieve overcrowding. It will update existing classrooms, science labs, and technology programs so you can train more nurses, firefighters, police officers, hospitality professionals, chefs, etc., as well as strengthen our veteran programs. Measure CC will benefit the entire Coachella Valley. None of this money can be diverted to the state or used for administration. We have a bond oversight committee of local citizens that will safeguard the funds and ensure that this bond money benefits our students and our local economy. COD is an important spoke in Rancho Mirage's economic wheel. We educate and train many of the people that work in this city, who work at your major businesses, including the Ritz-Carlton and the River, who are your golf course superintendents and landscapers for the country clubs, who are the nurses at Eisenhower Medical Center, who are your firefighters and local law enforcement who protect you. And yes, Officer Vega, who was killed a couple weeks ago, was a COD alumni. We have the support of key community leaders, and I will leave endorsement cards in hopes that you will join us in supporting this major effort. We ask that you visit www.voteyesonmeasurecc.com. Thank you, Mayor Weil and council members, for your time and your continued commitment to the beautiful city of Rancho Mirage and to the Coachella Valley. Thank you.
Thank you, Aurora. You have a long history of public service, you and your husband, and we thank you for your continued service throughout the many, many years. Are there any other public comments from anyone that did not fill out a form? Seeing none, I will ask for comments from the City Council. Start, Charlie.
Good, thank you.
Iris?
Yeah, thank you. I have two comments, or actually bits of information that I wanted to extend. And I believe that on our big screens you'll be able to see. Okay. This is something, as you can see, the question is, what happens to me if something happens to you? I'm very excited about this organization called Ari Had a Dream, also known as a heavenly pet sanctuary for everyone to consider when there is a need. This organization addresses a problem most of us don't think about until we absolutely need to. And that problem is, who is going to care for my pet, and what is going to happen to my pet when I am unable to? So whether it's because of an injury or sickness or moving to a facility that does not allow pets, or even if you are a member of a military branch and you're going to be on extended leave, This is an organization that will provide a loving, home-like environment for your pet's entire natural life. And it will be with nurturing, loving people who will take care of your pet 24/7. It is absolutely free of charge. They do depend on donations, and if you'd like to, you can go to their website and check them out. It's called Ari Had a Dream. Their telephone number is 760-534-9720, 534-9720. As I say, they do depend on donations. So if you are concerned on your pet's future when you're not around or would like to make a donation, please feel free to contact them. They are located in Rancho Mirage. And secondly, I would like to talk about our fabulous trails in Rancho Mirage. Because now that the weather has cooled and residents and visitors will be out walking on some of our beautiful hiking trails, there's probably a bit of information that you'd like to know about. And a flyer will be made up for City Hall distribution and also at our library. It'll be a double-sided flyer as what you're seeing on the screen. So you can take it with you, fold it up, put it in your pocket, and it gives you a lot of information about our hiking trails. Most people don't realize that we have 7.5 miles of hiking trails located within our city limits. They range from easy to moderate in difficulty. And I won't go through the entire list, but let me just give you a little example of what is available. First of all, if you are looking for an easy and leisurely walk, I might suggest the Butler Abrams Trail. It begins at Wilson Park and extends to Country Club Drive. It winds through a rural area. In fact, you may see a number of horses as you are walking. These trails are relatively flat and have fabulous views of golf courses and the mountains along the way. Also, we might offer a walk in Clancy Lane Trail. It is also an easy to moderate trail and begins on Clancy Lane, continues under Bob Hope Drive along the Whitewater Wash, and terminates at Rancho Mirage Community Park. We have a number of other ones. The Murata Trail System includes easy to moderate hikes. The Bighorn Overlook Trail, which is accessed in back of City Hall. It's only 1/4 mile long, but it has a vertical climb of 100 feet with several switchbacks. And then once you're at the top, you are rewarded with a shaded area and a fabulous view of Rancho Mirage. Also, we have the Jackrabbit Trail. That one is of a little bit more difficulty and rises 100 to 200 feet above Rancho Mirage. We have a variety of other trails that kind of intersect one another, so you're free to explore wherever you want. But as a reminder to be aware of, please be careful not to wander away from the trails for safety reasons and also to preserve the natural ecological system that we are trying to preserve. Remember also to let people know which trails on which you are going to be hiking. Bring plenty of water, and if you'd like more information, please click on to our website, which is ranchomirage.ca.gov, or you can stop by City Hall or the library and pick up a 2-sided map, which you are seeing on the screen. And one last reminder, because if you are bringing your dog, please be considerate of other hikers and remember to bring bags for waste deposit. Thank you so much and have a wonderful hike, and just be careful and enjoy what Rancho Mirage has to offer. Thank you.
Thank you, Iris. Richard?
Thank you, Mayor. Would you like to know what the Rattlers are doing these days?
Yeah, absolutely. Please tell us.
That's just on your tongue, ready to come out. Well, the Rattlers are in first place in the Deanza League. They're now 2-0, and since our last meeting, they played 29 Palms and beat them 38-3. and Coachella Valley 52-21. So they're 2-0. They're in first place this week. Tomorrow, in fact, they play Yucca Valley. And then they have two other games, Desert Mirage and Desert Hot Springs after that. So get out and see the Rattlers play. Undoubtedly, they'll be in the playoffs, so we'll have an opportunity to see them at home. The next 3 games are away. Great team, great spirit out there. They had senior week last game, and then the week before that, they had their homecoming. So a lot of kids involved, a lot of parents are involved, and go Rattlers!
Yay.
They are doing very well. They're making Rancho Mirage very proud. Dana?
Well, I was going to talk about a couple of things, but hearing that news has so overwhelmed me and just taken the breath away from me that I'm just not in a position where I feel that I can do it. So thank you, and give them our best.
It's go Rattlers,
I'm
Dana.
I'm just
Go Rattlers.
in great, how do you say, painful pleasure or pleasure painful? Well, whichever way it is. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, well, we have plenty of time to wait if you need to catch your breath. I think that concludes our council comments, and Jason Hodegui from Information Services Manager will provide a presentation regarding cybersecurity.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. October is National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. It's brought to you by the Department of Homeland Security. And today, nowadays, in technology, everyone's using computers, mobile devices, iPads out there. You want to be careful on what you post online. If you're using social media, you want to know what you're posting online and what people have access to. So if you have children out there, grandkids out there, you want to know what they're posting, keep track of what they're posting. I have 4 little ones. So before they post, I actually look at it. I have the same app they have on their iPad. And I can see exactly when they post, what picture they're showing, and who they're showing it to. So you want to keep track of where you post it, how they post it, your privacy settings. You want to check your privacy settings. A lot of these new apps like Facebook or Musical.ly, they're set for public, meaning anybody can see those pictures or that information. You want to set it to private and only invite the people you want to see those pictures or share those pictures. So you want to keep your have it a little more secure. The screen that's above you right here, you see it was done by a 4th grader. We're trying to get our kids involved. This is a 4th grader who's looking at cybersecurity. So she actually drew a picture of what she thought about beware phishing messages, check your email. So we're trying to get our kids involved. You can protect your identity by practicing safe habits. Stop, think, and connect. Stop other people from accessing your information by using strong passwords. Think before you download an app that you're not familiar with. You want to check the references, make sure it's okay to download. Connect with friends safely online by checking your privacy settings. You can practice some safe habits. Want to back up your data. I take a lot of pictures with family members, and I put that on my computer. I also back up that data. I know if something happens to my computer and I lose those pictures, my wife would kill me. So I back up that data. So you guys should make sure you back up your data, back up your files, either on the cloud or make a backup copy on your CD. And then once again, strong passwords. Make sure you guys use different passwords for your banking and your social media. Don't use the same passwords across the board. Make sure your password's complex, at least 8 characters long, capital letter, lowercase, special characters. And another thing I want to mention is keep your software current. Make sure you're running updates if you're running Windows. Make sure you're running Windows updates. Make sure your antivirus is up to date. That'll just protect you from viruses coming in. Some resources available for you guys to look at is there's a website called Stay Safe Online. It's by the National Cybersecurity Alliance. It provides information on security. They offer free antivirus software, as well as if you do have a virus, they have tools to remove that software. And there's great information on that site. The Department of Homeland Security also has a great site called dhs.gov, Stop, Think, and Connect. And that's all I have for you guys.
Well, thanks, Jason. I'll tell you, you can't be too careful. I received a an email the other day from another city that wanted to check whether the email addresses were correct, and it listed all of the various members of city councils and so forth, and it just didn't appear to me to be legitimate. I sent it to our city manager, Randy Binder, who emailed me back and said, no, this is really a phony. Now, that comes from actually not another city. It was one of the entities that we do business with. And you just can't be too careful about this. I know in my case, I have a wife that has passwords that are so complicated that it takes me hours to figure out how to get to something. But on the other hand,
don't kid us, you've never figured it out.
I knew I left myself vulnerable. But thank you, Jason. We cannot be reminded enough about the security aspect.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
if I might also add on to that, the fact that we have a member of our Emergency Preparedness Commission, Jim McFarland, and he is an expert, has written books on cyber terrorism. We give lectures at different places, and anytime you have an opportunity where you want to have some training for your employees or for your neighborhood on what to do and what not to do to make yourself invulnerable to these hackers, please don't hesitate to call us at City Hall. We'll get you in touch with our Emergency Preparedness Commission, and we'll be glad to have Jim McFarland come and speak and give you all the tips that you need. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Iris.
Could I add a point?
Yes.
It's not cybersecurity, but it's definitely along these lines. About 3 days ago, I received a telephone call from a very stressed out teenager who said, Grandpa, this is your eldest grandson. And he proceeded to tell me the story that they had gone up to Vegas for the evening. They were driving back. I see one of the police officers back there nodding. He's got the same grandson that I had. But continuing this stressful situation that in starting to leave Vegas, he got into an accident. I swear, Grandpa, I only had one beer. But they're putting me under arrest. This is my one phone call, and I need to be bailed out. And a friend of mine some years ago had a similar call that flashed on my mind during this conversation, and I wasn't very far into it when I knew I was being conned. So this is a con that people do, usually to older people. I was an exception there, I guess. And they eventually tell you where to send some money so that they can post bail and get out of jail, and crying and Grandpa, I love you, and all of that. And it's all malarkey. The whole thing is a scam. And finally, I got tired of playing along with the guy. I said, that's a pretty good effort. I called him a couple of words that I won't refer here, and told him where he could go. And at that point, he hung up before I could hang up. So I just wanted to warn people that scam continues now to be employed by young fellows acting as though, making you think that they're one of your grandchildren.
I'd say one of the other popular ones right now, I don't know whether anyone else on the council has received this. I've received 2 or 3, very authoritative voice that says, this is to advise you that the Internal Revenue Service has opened. I see, heads bobbing there. I see a lot of heads bobbing, obviously. Boy, is everybody illegal like I am then? Obviously. But
Larry Nichols is doing that.
In any case, this is a popular one. Opening an investigation, please call such and such a number. Well, obviously, we know that the IRS doesn't initiate phone calls, but this is one that's going around at the present time. Very, very popular. Iris, did you want to say something?
We also had something a couple years ago saying that we had used a toll road. And this was our last notice, and we better get our money in right away or else. So there's all kinds of methodologies that are out there, and anything to separate you from your money, please be aware. Please don't even click on anything that is unfamiliar, and keep yourself safe.
Absolutely. Words of wisdom. If there are no other council comments, I will close that portion and ask for an approval of the minutes of October 4th. May I have a motion, please?
I make that motion.
And a second. Please vote. And the motion is approved 5-0. At this point, I will call upon Randall Binder, our city manager, to go over the consent calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the City Council, you have 5 items on consent today. The first one is to waive full reading of the ordinances that are introduced or adopted pursuant to today's agenda. Item number 2 is second reading of new regulations regarding fireworks displays in Rancho Mirage to protect the peace and quiet of our neighborhoods. Number 3 is appointment of Gene Penn to the Speaker Series as recommended by Mayor Weil. Number 4 are contracts. Number 5 are demands. We're here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions? No. All right. Any questions from the public? Seeing none, I'll call for a motion regarding the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second. Please vote. And the motion is approved 5-0. The next is a update on the CV link. Dana, do you have any comments about that?
I just want to say that CVAG is continuing its effort to punish Indian Wells for having the audacity of allowing their residents to vote on the issue of CV Link. They will have on the agenda of the CVAG Transportation Commission meeting in just a week or so, the effort to claw back about $2.5 million that was approved for Indian Wells about 10 years ago for sound walls in their city. And now they're saying, well, that money shouldn't have come from Measure A funds. They shouldn't have been able to use Measure A funds for that. And so they're going to try to take it back. They'll end up losing all of this, statute of limitations, among other reasons. But it just shows the effort that they will go to keep cities from having votes on the issue of the CV Link. It's just an outrageous power play by CVAG and the executive committee, which supports virtually everything that the leadership of the executive committee requests, leadership of CVAG requests. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. The next item will be presented by Isaiah Hagerman, our Director of Administrative Services, regarding the approval of Eisenhower Medical Center issuing tax-exempt revenue bonds. Isaiah?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. The item before you today is an action to help Eisenhower Medical Center issue tax-exempt bonds. We will be performing the TEFRA hearing, that is the Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act of 1982, and adopting a resolution in support of this, which will allow Eisenhower Medical Center to issue tax-exempt bonds. The advantage to Eisenhower Medical Center is that reduces the cost of borrowing money. The bonds that will be issued as a result of this action are of no financial commitment to the city of Rancho Mirage. They are the sole responsibility of Eisenhower Medical Center. Outside of performing the public hearing today and approving the resolution attached to the staff report. There is no other involvement or commitment on behalf of the city. At this time, that concludes my presentation. I would be happy to answer any questions. I do see representatives from Eisenhower Medical Center and CMFA if there are any questions of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Isaiah. Does any
Well,
comments?
maybe we
regarding the
could
council?
listen to whatever that presentation is. Is there?
They're here for questions if you have questions about the
Yeah.
bond deal.
Well, I just thought they might like to make a pitch.
Ken, you want to come up?
I mean, you have to earn the endorsement.
You noticed that council member said he didn't ask if you'd like to make some comments. He said, would you like to make a pitch? So
Absolutely.
that indicates that you're going to ask for something.
Yeah, I'm not asking for anything. That's the good thing. I'm not here asking for any support in payment of the bonds either. So it's fully Eisenhower's obligation. I'm Ken Weed. I'm the Chief Financial Officer of Eisenhower Medical Center. And we are in the process, I was here a few months ago, restructuring our debt. We had a smaller debt issue about 4 months ago that we restructured. And we've got two large issues now. It's a series 2007 and a 2010 debt series. Total's about $360 million. We might have a possibility of refunding about $320 million of that. So we're asking for, I guess, support and authorization of the authority to issue those bonds up to $320 million. And it's for us essentially right now. Knock on wood, considering what's going on in the banking environment right now, it means probably about $1.5 million, $2 million in annual debt service cost savings for the institution. But none of the funds, none of the $320 million, if we go up that amount, is for any new construction. It's just simply to pay off old debt and refund into new debt.
What's the difference in the interest rate on the old bond versus the new bond?
It's about a 1 3/4% ballpark right now. We'll see. It keeps moving up. The past couple of weeks, our gap's been slowly evaporating on us in terms of the favorability of it. So, but yeah, it's pretty sizable.
You anticipate the bond being rated?
It is rated Moody's, Fitch, triple B. So triple B bond rating, and I believe Moody's is BAA.
Great.
When do they become due?
It would be a series of, I don't have the amortization table in front of me, but over the next 30 years they would be payable. There's a debt amortization schedule on it.
Yeah, they're 30-year term bonds.
30 years, I gather.
Excuse me?
30 years. Oh, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any other council comments? Are there any comments from the public? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll close the public portion of the item. If there are no other council comments?
Just have one comment,
Yes.
and it just reiterates what Isaiah previously had said, and it's noted on page 7.1 of the staff report, and it just states that the Eisenhower Medical Center bonds are to be issued as the sole responsibility of Eisenhower, and the city of Rancho Mirage has no financial, legal, or moral obligation on these. It's very important. It's great that we can put our name with Eisenhower to make this financing available, but our residents need not worry about us supporting the entity. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. No other comments. I'll ask for a motion regarding the item.
I'd like to make a motion, if I may. The City Council adopt and resolve Resolution 2017, next in order, approving the issuance of revenue refunding bonds by the authority for the purpose of refinancing the acquisition, construction, and improvement of center facilities for the benefit of Eisenhower Medical Center.
Second.
And we'll also conduct we have conducted the scheduled TEFRA public hearing on the proposed issuance of the tax-exempt bonds by Eisenhower.
Second.
Please vote. Yeah, we already did that, so. And the motion is approved, 5-0. The next item on our calendar is the fiscal year 2015-16 year-end budget adjustments by Jesse Eckenroth, our finance manager. A very exciting report. Jesse, we're anxious and looking forward to hearing it.
Should be an exciting presentation.
Anytime.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to present the staff report and presentation today. The objective of today's staff report and presentation is to give the council an overview of how the fiscal year ended and to stay within our budgetary policy by approving the necessary budget adjustments. The presentation is going to focus on the results of fiscal year 15-16 activity, and the staff report will serve as a mechanism to comply with our budgetary policy. I'll go ahead and pull the PowerPoint up. So let's get started. So the goal of the presentation is to provide the year-end financial information so that the city can determine if the year ended better or worse than anticipated. So the first thing that we're going to take a look at are the budget estimates compared to the actual year-end results. So this is a snapshot of our operating surplus. At the bottom, there's a total for our operating surplus. You can see we began at the beginning of the year with an original budget surplus estimated at $1.2 million. At mid-year, we amended the budget to have a $561,000 surplus. But our actual surplus at year-end for the operating side is $2.8 million for the city. So great news for the city to come in with a surplus much higher than anticipated. So let's look at the cause for the operating surplus. We had an uptick of $714,000 in our revenue. We had four sources that were the primary contributors to that: transient occupancy tax, transfers from the CFD, reimbursements, and property tax. This slide shows our budget to our actual. So the red bar on the left is the actual, and the blue bar on the right is the budgeted revenue. And none of these revenues ticked up very high. We have a conservative budgeting policy, so there were small increases in all of them. And overall, the general fund ended 2.9% higher in revenues than anticipated. So that was the reason for an additional $714,000 in revenues for the year. On the operating expense side, we had a reduction of $1.57 million in actual expenditures compared to what we budgeted. That was primarily due to conservative budgeting. So when we budget, we give ample room in our budgeted expenditures to cover the anticipated fiscal year operations. And typically, the city does not exhaust all the budgeted expense accounts. And what we end up with is an increased surplus due to an overall reduction in our spending. In addition to that, we had a decrease in the anticipated subsidy to the fire tax fund. That was due to three main reasons. The first reason was that the revenue came into the fire tax fund higher than anticipated, which means the general fund had to subsidize less because the fire fund produced more revenue than anticipated. Second, the fire fund had some fund balance from the previous year that we were able to use for the current fiscal year 15-16. And third, the city budgets a subsidy amount to the fire fund based on Exhibit A provided by County Fire. Exhibit A assumes that the positions are at the maximum salary range. So although this is unlikely that all the positions will be at the maximum salary range, the city uses this estimate to have a conservative approach when budgeting. So these factors all contributed to the city coming in $1.57 million under anticipated expenditures. The next slide we're going to get into is non-operating revenues and expenditures. So these are these one-time projects that we do. So we had an overall non-operating deficit of $400,000. We originally started the year with an $11 million operating deficit. We did not adjust that at mid-year, and at year-end we ended with a $400,000 deficit. This was mainly due to timing. There was two large purchases we did not make this year. It was the Ritz Spa Suites for $5 million and Section 19 for $5 million. So those two projects were a total of $10 million. In addition to that, there was some capital projects that were deferred that we were planning originally to do in 15-16 that have moved to 16-17. So those one-time revenues, those one-time expenses were not incurred this fiscal year. So mainly it's just due to timing to the change from the original budget to the actual that we have at year end. Non-operating revenues consisted approximately of $900,000 in grant reimbursements and $7.85 million in reimbursements from ROPS projects. The non-operating expenditures of $9.2 million were mostly comprised of the following capital improvements. We did the expansion and remodel at rancho Mirage Community Park, library improvements, the intersection at Gerald Ford and Bob Hope, and then various street and building improvements throughout the city comprise those $9.2 million worth of non-operating expenditures. The next slide, this is just a big financial snapshot of the reserves and the overall operating surplus and the non-operating surplus deficit. So we can see that the $2.8 million operating surplus, the $400,000 non-operating deficit left us with $2.4 million in total general fund surplus for the year. At the bottom, there is the fund balance schedule that we have. All the fund balances were unchanged except for the unassigned fund balance and the capital improvement reserve fund balance. So you can see in total, again, $2.4 million that we were able to add to the total fund balance. We started the year at almost $68 million, and we got to end fiscal year 15-16 with over $70 million in the general fund balance. So definitely a notable accomplishment for such a small city as ours. The $623,000 reduction we see in capital improved reserves was due to mainly three projects. It was the City Hall water damage restoration. We did a Highway 111 street lighting, and there were some IT software and equipment initiatives that we went ahead and tackled, so they came out of the capital improvement reserve. So overall, we ticked up $2.4 million, and we're left with over $70 million in the general fund balance. I think one other thing I want to mention in this is some notable highlights. I think a $70 million fund balance is impressive for a small city. However, what makes Rancho Mirage stand out financially from other cities is not the amount of fund balance that the city has, it's the amount of debt that the city has. Last fiscal year, we spent over $14 million in retiring long-term liabilities and debts. The city paid its unfunded pension liability and paid all outstanding loans except one Department of Energy loan that has a 1% interest rate. This fiscal year, the Budget Subcommittee recommended making a one-time payment to the OPEB liability, and City Council approved the expenditure. By having healthy reserves and wise counsel in handling the city debt, residents can have confidence in the stability and the future of the city of Rancho Mirage. In addition to having a solid financial framework, the city has also maintained a high level of public safety, infrastructure improvements, and community programs. This year, the city has purchased a new medic unit that will be staffed this fiscal year. Rancho Mirage Community Park received an impressive expansion and renovation. A new dog park is currently being constructed, and various streets and intersections are receiving safety features and upgrades. Community programs are placed as a high priority, and the council has expanded community programs by adding the music in the park. The combination of the solid financial foundation, elimination of debt, top-notch amenities and service levels elevate the city of Rancho Mirage to a place few cities will ever venture. In summary, structurally, the city continues its long history of financial stability, as evidenced by the $2.4 million general fund surplus. The city continues to execute its long-term plans and use of reserves to better position the city financially and invest in community assets. That concludes my presentation. In addition to the presentation, I would like to note 2 areas of the staff report. The first highlight I would like to mention is page 9-7, which notes the library ended the year with a surplus. The general fund did not have to subsidize the library, so the library is standing on its own and ending the year with a positive fund balance. The other thing I'd like to note is page 9-8, which notes the Housing Authority has 2 long-term loan receivables totaling $8.1 million and an additional balance of $8.1 million, leaving the Housing Authority with a total fund balance of over $16 million. That concludes my presentation and staff report. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. I can't imagine that anybody would not be pleased with the financial results of the city. When you can add $2.4 million to the general fund and have $70 million approximately in reserve, and in addition to that, reducing long-term debt, it's quite remarkable. And I'd like to compliment the Budget Subcommittee, Councilman Hobart and Councilman Kite, who have been on this thing for many, many years. It doesn't happen overnight. Our Director of Administrative Services, Isaiah Hagerman, has done a terrific job on this issue. You've put together a fine team, Isaiah, and the city is very, very proud of your accomplishments. With that, I'll ask for any comments from the City Council.
I would just add, Mr. Mayor, that I can't remember any of these meetings that our city manager, Randy Binder, wasn't present and didn't offer insight along with Isaiah and Jesse. And I just want to make sure his name gets included in those who are appropriately thanked for working on this, on budget issues year after year.
Indeed, absolutely. If there are no other council comments, I'll ask if there are any comments from the public. Seeing none, I will close the public portion and ask for a motion to approve the item.
I will make a motion that the City Council approve and adopt Resolution number 2016, next in line, amending the fiscal year 2015-16 budget, and Resolution number 2016 HA, next in line, amending fiscal year 2015-16 budget for the Rancho Mirage Housing Authority, and approve Resolution number 2016 CSD, next in line, amending the fiscal year 2015-16 related to Rancho Mirage Community Services District.
Is there a second? Second. Please vote. And the motion is approved 5-0. Next item will be presented by Britt Wilson, our management analyst, regarding the inclusion of properties within Rancho Mirage's jurisdiction. Britt?
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor and Council. This item is the Property Assessed Clean Energy Program, of which the Council is aware. The City currently offers several of these programs. These are done by virtue of our membership and participation in the Coachella Valley Association of Governments. Those programs include Y Green Energy's PACE program, HERO, and California First. On September 26th, the CVAG Executive Committee took action and approved another PACE provider, California Municipal Finance Authority, and their open PACE program. This is very similar and identical to the California Statewide Communities Development Authority open PACE program that this council approved in May. So to allow this provider to assess the properties in the city, self-assessed properties, you would need to approve the attached resolution. Lee McCormick from California Municipal Finance Authority and his team are here if you have any technical questions. With that, we'll turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Britt. Gentlemen, do you have any comments that you would like to make? Oh, okay, sure.
Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. Lee McCormick with the California Municipal Finance Authority. As was mentioned earlier, we're here requesting your approval of the CMFA Open PACE program. Just a couple items that are unique to the CMFA program. We're the only program that actually has a give back program. We give 50% of our issuance fee back to the local communities, 25% to the city or county, and 25% to a charity located within that city and county. And since 2004, we've given back over $10 million through the give back program. We, like the other programs, we have very strong consumer protections. CMFA has some additional protections related to fraud prevention with contractors, as well as an ability to pay requirement in our consumer protection program that's not in others. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
If I
Excuse me. Mr. Hopper?
I know we covered a little bit of this at the CVAG meeting, but I want to make it clear to the residents of Rancho Mirage. The city of Rancho Mirage has no liability for any activity that is undertaken between an owner of a house and the company that's providing the PACE loan.
Absolutely correct. There is no city involvement in the program unless the city decides to maybe list the program on the website. We very explicitly make sure the contractors that are working underneath our program do not go out and represent or market the PACE program as being supported, approved, or facilitated by the city. It's really just an approval by the city to allow us to affect the property tax assessments on the tax roll.
The reason I make that point clear is many times, in fact, probably more often than not, homeowners who enter into a PACE contract with one of the PACE providing companies somehow believe that the city, by approving the company doing business in the city and in the authority of CVAG, that the city somehow is offering some degree of assurance as to some of the financial or contractual terms that the homeowner and the company agree to in their final agreement. And that's not the case. And there are, from time to time, in fact, just recently, I received a letter of considerable dissatisfaction with a PACE loan that the homeowner had with one of the other PACE companies, one of the providers. And the city is not in a position to arbitrate or really have much effect on anything that gets into the terms of the contract between the homeowner and the company. Let me ask this question. At the present time, what is the, I'll use the word average, but that may not be the best word to be using. What is the going rate that your company charges for one of the PACE loans? And explain a little bit, if you would, in answering that question, what the service is that you're providing and what the relationship is between you and the solar energy company that may be involved when the homeowner enters into a contract with you.
Great question. So the California Municipal Finance Authority is actually the issuer for the program. So we are actually kind of the umbrella under which the program administrators, who are essentially the lenders, operate. We currently have 4 program administrators. We have Energy Efficient Equity, which Taylor Leibolt, a representative, is here today as well. They focus strictly on residential PACE projects. We also have 3 commercial PACE providers. We have Blue Flame Energy Finance, On PACE, and Structured Finance, doing larger commercial projects. The rates right now on the residential side, and this is E3's program, so I will quote the rates I got this morning in anticipation of the meeting. Currently, they offer 5, 10, 15, 20, and 30-year terms on their PACE assessments. The 5-year rate is currently at 6.69. The 10-year rate is 7.49. The 15 and 20-year rates are the same at 7.98. And then the 30-year rate is at 8.49. And that's for kind of the standard PACE loan, where it's based strictly on the equity in the home. They actually are in the process of rolling out kind of a preferred PACE program for people with high credit that actually go through a credit background check as well if they want to apply for that. And those rates are, they offer a 5, 15, and 30-year. The 5-year rate is at 1.99%, the 15-year is at 3.99%, and the 30-year is at 5.99%. So much more competitive if they go through the additional credit review and they qualify. And I know you probably have heard this from other PACE providers, competition helps drive down rates. And CMFA is a big proponent of that. When we came into the market on the traditional bond financing, like the EMC transaction earlier today, we came into the market back in 2004. And since then, even though it's 12 years later, the fees that are charged for bond financings are almost half what they were 12 years ago. And a lot of that has been driven by the CMFA coming in and being very price competitive in that market. And we started in the PACE market about a year ago, opting in cities and counties, which is the first step into offering. San Diego County, we've actually been doing a lot more assessments, but our goal is to also help drive down rates by increasing competition and making the rates that the homeowners pay more market competitive.
Are all of the PACE providers, do they have the exact same terms with respect to a property owner who's had a solar system going for, let's say, 5 years, 10 years? You are the lender behind that solar system. The owner gets to the point where the owner wants to sell his house or her house. What authority or what kind of permission, if any, what authority, what is the situation with respect to the owner's ability to sell that house with that loan remaining, I shouldn't say remaining unpaid, but with that loan in existence at the time the owner wants to sell the house? How is that situation dealt with by your company?
Pretty consistent across the board for PACE providers. So there's no prohibition from any of our PACE administrators with regards to either transferring that lien to the new property owner or paying it off at the point of the sale. And there actually are no prepayment penalties at all with regards to any of our PACE program administrators. So it can get paid off.
Would you have to approve the new buyer if the owner decided to?
No, that stays with the property and transfers with the property if they so choose. So there's no additional approval. There's no way the CMFA or any of our program administrators could block a sale or kind of disrupt a potential sale of a property with regards to the PACE lien.
Would you make it a point to send to Mr. Hagerman a typical contract that your firm engages in with property owners?
Absolutely.
In the valley?
Yep.
We'd appreciate that, just so we could look at it. And
sure.
Not that we're not looking for anything. We just want to see what the contract looks like.
We're happy to send that over. That'd be great.
Thank you.
You bet.
You had mentioned before that I was unaware that you made a certain percentage of charitable contribution. Mm-hmm. Any idea of the type of contributions that you may have made to charities?
I can pull out my phone real quickly. I actually have my list of what we've done in the Coachella Valley. To date, the CMFA has donated over $340,000 to cities located in Coachella Valley. Some examples: Carol's Kitchen, Fish Food Bank, Olive Crest Academy, Inspire Life Skills Training, Cabot's Museum Foundation, Desert Hot Springs Community Task Force, Desert Hot Springs Micro Loan, California Family Life Center, Find, Martha's Village and Kitchen, Queen of Hearts, Clearwater Residential, Oak Grove Institute Foundation, Warfighter Maid, Boys and Girls Club of Coachella Valley, Desert Arc, Desert Cancer Foundation, Desert Samaritans for Seniors, Shelter from the Storm, Deaf Senior Foundation of Palm Springs, Desert AIDS Project, Iraq Star, Operation Safe House, UCR Foundation, Mar Scott Foundation, and VNW Circle of Care.
That's great. Now, how do you select? I mean, does somebody apply for a grant of some kind?
We kind of fly under the radar. The CMFA board has a sister board through the California Foundation for Public Facilities, and it's a common board, and the board members will make recommendations for charities, but they will take suggestions or recommendations from council members. We're always looking for good charities. Believe it or not, we've been so successful. We've given away over $10 million statewide to charities alone, and so we're always looking for new charities that make a lot of sense for our mandate.
If you could be kind enough to also send us something along those lines. We have a charitable process here at the city. Council member Smotrich and myself head that up, and possibly there's a way that we can cooperate on some of the charities that apply to us, and maybe we could get them a few more dollars. So if you would maybe at the same time as the contract that Councilmember Hobart asked you about, some procedure that could be a benefit, we would appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Okay, I thank you. Are there any other questions from any council members?
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, I'll close the public portion of the matter and ask for a motion.
I'll make the motion to adopt resolution consenting to the inclusion of properties within the jurisdictional boundaries of the City of Rancho Mirage and California Municipal Finance Authority, CMFA, open PACE programs, authorizing the CMFA to accept applications from property owners, conduct contractual assessment proceedings, and levy contractual assessments within the jurisdictional boundaries of the City of Rancho Mirage, and authorizing relevant and related actions.
Thank you. And a second.
Second.
Please vote. And the motion is approved 5-0. I will now ask our city attorney, Steve Quintanilla, to review those items that will be discussed in the closed session.
Mr. Mayor, at this time, the City Council is going to recess into closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9 D4 regarding 2 potential cases. Council will also meet pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9 D1 regarding the case of Veronica Juarez versus City of Rancho Mirage.
Thank you, and we'll now recess to closed session.